That night, the rain fell like unraveling threads from a torn sky, cold, relentless, and heavy with silence. A child appeared on the roadside, barefoot, soaked, limping, mute, deaf. He didn't cry out, didn't wave for help, because he couldn't. Cars sped past their headlights, slicing through the dark like indifferent knives. Who would stop for a child who couldn't speak, couldn't hear, and carried no name? But Evelyn March did. The woman everyone in town saw as just a quiet widow with a dusty porch and too many old recipes. She lived alone in a crooked cottage with a broken oven and a little girl to raise. People barely noticed her. But that night she noticed him. She didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations. She simply opened the door and gave what little she had warmth, shelter, and a steady hand. By morning, he was gone. But what he left behind would return one day carrying more than just memory. And tell me, have you ever done something kind quietly with no one watching and wondered if it would ever find its way back to you? They said Evelyn March was a woman of just enough heat to last the winter, just enough flour to bake one more loaf, just enough breath to rise each morning and do it all again. She lived in a weathered cottage at the edge of a town where memories lingered longer than visitors. The porch sagged a little. The shutters hung crooked, but the windows always glowed warm at dusk like an old lantern that hadn't given up. Widowed young Evelyn had raised her niece Clara alone after her sister's accident, a child left behind with wide eyes and hands always reaching. The world called it a burden. Evelyn called it a vow. She worked early hours at the bakery folding dough before the sky turned pink. Her hands moved with quiet certainty like they remembered a time when life still made sense. She never missed a shift, never asked for help, never spoke of the mortgage notices piling in a drawer with expired coupons and Clara's crayon sketches of sunflowers. To most, Evelyn was invisible, a fixture. But fixtures, too, can carry weight. One Friday, when the power flickered out mid-storm, she lit a candle and kept kneading, whispering lullabies over the hum of wind. Clara slept nearby, curled in a blanket, her chest rising like a leaf floating on water. That was Evelyn's way. No declarations, no drama. Just showing up every day for a child who called her Auntie Ev and believed she made the moon rise on purpose. And yet, behind the stillness, something had shifted. The house had grown quieter lately. Colder, not from the draft, but from the kind of weariness that settles in when you give more than you receive. When every kind act feels like a stone placed gently into your own empty pockets. Sometimes at night, Evelyn would open that drawer in the kitchen not to pay a bill, but to run her thumb along the edge of Clara's drawing a picture of their house, small and leaning with a single word above it, home. That's what she fought to keep. Not walls, not equity, but home. So when she saw that boy in the rain, barefoot, wordless, abandoned by the world, something ancient inside her stirred. She knew that look, because once years ago, she'd worn it too. She didn't stop to weigh the risks. She just stopped. And the next morning, all that remained was a puddle on the floor, and a drawing left on the table, a house, an open door, and two hands holding. She didn't understand it then, but the door she opened that night was just beginning to swing wide. For 12 days, the drawing stayed on Evelyn's kitchen table. Not out of forgetfulness, but reverence. A crooked roof, an open door, two figures holding hands, no name, no explanation, just a silent thank you left behind by a boy who couldn't speak. Every morning, Evelyn passed it on her way to warm the stove. She didn't move it. She couldn't. It felt like part of the house now, a whisper lingering in the corners. No one else knew, not Myra, who brought jam jars every Sunday, not the school still calling about Clara's unpaid lunch balance, not even Clara, who simply said, "He was quiet like clouds, but I think he liked my blanket." Evelyn never said a word. But every evening as the sky darkened, her eyes drifted to the road as if the rain might return. And with it, the boy. But life didn't pause. The bills came. Thick envelopes with bold letters and no warmth. The house, the one her husband had built with his own hands, was now slipping from hers. She tried everything. Extra shifts at the bakery, custom cakes sold by candlelight, even listed her mother's antique teapot online. And when that wasn't enough, she turned off the internet. Until Clara came home in tears. "I couldn't finish my science project," she sobbed. Evelyn's hands never stopped moving, but her hope began to wear thin like fabric washed too many times. Then, one Thursday, a small shift. At the laundromat, Evelyn folded a towel with the drawing peeking from her bag. Myra caught a glimpse. "Wait, where did you get that?" Evelyn paused. "It's something Clara drew." Myra squinted. No, that's his work. The Quiet Echo. Haven't you heard he's a young artist, maybe 12 now? Deaf, doesn't speak, only draws houses. Always houses." She lowered her voice. "There's an exhibit in Philadelphia. They say he's a genius." The words hung in the air. The Quiet Echo. That night, Evelyn sat at the library, hands trembling slightly as she typed. The computer was slow, her patience slower. But eventually, she found it. Silent Hands. An exhibit of resilience. A black and white photo. The boy. Older now, steady gaze, stillness in every line. No name. Just the title, Untitled Number 27. The door that stayed open. She leaned closer. The same roof, the same crooked window, the same door, hers. Her kitchen. Her porch. He had remembered. He had seen her, and still. He hadn't come back. Why? The next morning a new envelope arrived, the final notice from the bank. 10 days, and the home would be gone. That evening, Clara handed Evelyn a new drawing. A tree, a swing, a woman and a child, and, at the top written in pink crayon, "Don't sell the garden, Auntie Ev." That's where I planted my dream. Evelyn stood at the kitchen table. She placed Clara's drawing beside the boy's. 2 messages, both silent, both asking her not to give up. She looked out the window. The wind picked up swirling dry leaves across the gravel like forgotten stories. And she wondered if I could be remembered in a drawing. Could I be found again in a storm? It began, as some reckonings do in the most ordinary of places, a folding table at the back of a community breakfast hall where the coffee was bitter, the lights too bright, and people came not to talk but to be near the warmth of others. Evelyn had arrived with a basket of day-old bread and no real intention. She hadn't come to be seen, just to feel less invisible. She kept her head low, refilling cups, slicing loaves, wiping crumbs with the kind of practiced stillness that makes one blend into walls. Until a young woman in a navy sweater paused mid-bite and pointed to the folded drawing peeking from Evelyn's apron. "That his?" she asked. Evelyn froze. "Excuse me?" The woman smiled gently. "The boy, from the exhibit. The Quiet Echo. That's his style. But I've never seen that piece before." She leaned in. "Where did you get it?" Evelyn's hands closed protectively around the paper. She hesitated, words tangling at the back of her throat. Then slowly she told her. Not all of it, just enough. The rain, the boy, the silence, the drawing. The woman listened, eyes widening with each detail, then reached into her bag and pulled out a flyer. An upcoming gallery talk. Silent Hands, honoring voices without sound. "Philadelphia, 2 days away. You should come," she said, voice low. "He's different now, but he still draws homes. Only homes. Like he's searching for something he left behind." She paused. "Maybe that something is you." Evelyn didn't sleep that night. She sat at the kitchen table staring at both drawings, the boy's and Clara's. Both held something fragile. A plea. A memory. A map. She borrowed Myra's car, the one with a dented bumper and stale mint gum in the glove box, and drove through the rain toward a city that felt like another planet. The gallery was quiet. White walls, bright lights. Dozens of framed sketches, all of houses. But no doors. None open. None like hers. Until the final wall. And there it was. Untitled, number 27. The door that stayed open. Her breath caught. It was exact. Even the crooked window pane. Even the roof line that leaned slightly to the left, and beneath it a small engraved plaque dedicated to the stranger who saw me when I had no voice. Evelyn stood in front of it a long time. People passed behind her. Some lingered. No one knew. No one asked. But her hands trembled. That night she returned home to another envelope from the bank. Final warning. 10 days. She tucked it into the drawer beside Clara's picture and the gallery flyer. Then she sat in the dark, the house quiet, but not empty. Because for the first time in a long while, she knew someone had remembered. The next morning, as she stepped out to sweep the porch, she saw it. A small square package wrapped in brown paper left neatly at her doorstep. No postage, no note. She opened it slowly. Inside, a hand-stitched cloth folded with care. Beneath it, a page torn from a sketchbook. This time the drawing was newer, bolder. Still a house, still hers. But now, there were 3 figures, the tall woman, the small girl, and standing beside them, older now but unmistakable, the boy, his hand no longer held, but resting gently on her shoulder. Evelyn stared at it, heart pounding. And then she noticed the words scribbled beneath in delicate blocky letters, "I remember." She pressed the page to her chest, the wind brushing against her cheeks like fingertips, and in the distance the faintest echo of wheels on gravel. She stepped off the porch and looked up the road. A car was coming, dark, slow, pulling into her drive like it had always belonged there. She didn't move, just waited, breath steady, heart not quite. Because somehow she knew. This time he wasn't coming back alone. It wasn't the kind of car that belonged on her gravel path, sleek, dark, humming low like it had secrets to keep. Evelyn stood frozen on the porch, one hand still clutching the folded drawing, the other resting lightly on her chest as if her heart might forget its rhythm without guidance. The car rolled to a gentle stop. The engine silenced. And then a door opened. Out stepped a young man in his early 20s, tall, composed, wrapped in a dark wool coat that barely moved in the wind. His face older now, fuller, but the eyes... Yes, it was him, Ezra, but he wasn't alone. A woman emerged from the passenger side. Soft-spoken, mid-30s, a silver pin at her collar shaped like a spiral, the universal symbol for deaf and nonverbal awareness. Behind her, from the back seat, came a third figure, a woman in a tan blazer holding a briefcase. Her stance was formal, but her eyes kind. Ezra stepped forward. He didn't wave. He didn't speak. He simply reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope sealed with wax. Evelyn moved slowly down the steps, the gravel crunching beneath her feet like bones shifting under earth. She took the envelope. It felt heavier than its size should allow. The woman in the tan blazer extended a hand. "Mrs. March," she said, "my name is Julia Reyes. I'm here on behalf of the Haven Trust, a non-profit organization founded by Mr. Ezra Hale." She gestured gently toward him. He may not speak, but he has ways of telling stories. Evelyn nodded, not trusting her voice. Inside the envelope, a letter of gratitude handwritten in looping print. A legal document confirming full mortgage forgiveness through the Haven Trust. A notarized offer for Evelyn to become the namesake of a new community initiative, March House. A place to begin again. Her knees nearly buckled. Julia continued softly. "Ezra credits you as the first place he felt safe. He's turned your kindness into a network, shelters, resource centers, creative studios for nonverbal children. But this," she paused, glancing toward the old cottage, "this is where it began." Evelyn looked at Ezra. His hands moved slow, practiced, full of meaning. The interpreter translated, "You didn't ask who I was. You just opened the door, and that saved everything." Tears welled in her eyes, but she smiled the kind of smile that breaks open slowly like winter yielding to spring. But then the twist. A second car approached. This one bore the seal of the county land office. A man stepped out, papers in hand, his expression apologetic. "Mrs. March, I'm afraid I need to speak with you. There's a matter concerning your property line. Evelyn blinked. Now, he nodded. There's a claim from a third-party investor. They've discovered an old lien filed under your husband's name never discharged. It's technically valid. They're seeking to repossess the back acre. His voice dropped. That includes the garden. Her garden. Where Clara planted sunflowers, where she buried a time capsule beside her husband's boots, where her porch light fell each evening like a benediction. Ezra turned toward her, watching her carefully. His eyes, wide and calm, seemed to ask, "Do you want to fight or let it go?" Evelyn stared at the papers, then up at her house, then down at her hands trembling tired but not empty, and slowly she lifted her head. "I won't lose it," she whispered. "Not again." Julia stepped forward. "Then let us help." Ezra nodded once, a quiet vow. The land officer cleared his throat. "I'm required to give you 10 days to respond." Evelyn looked at the setting sun dipping just beyond the tree line of the threatened acre. She didn't feel small. She felt rooted. She folded the lien notice carefully, slipped it into the same envelope as Ezra's letter. 2 stories, one beginning, one not finished yet. And as the sun slid behind the garden, she wasn't ready to surrender. Evelyn turned to Ezra. "Tell me," she said softly, "how do you fight?" Without raising her voice, Ezra smiled, and signed a single word. "Together." The wind changed the next morning. Not just outside, but inside Evelyn, where something long frozen began to shift. She rose before dawn. No alarm, no routine, just instinct. Barefoot, she stood on the cold kitchen floor, holding the drawing Ezra had left. 3 figures. And for the first time she didn't look at it with longing. She saw it as a promise. That day, she didn't go to the bakery. Instead, she walked the perimeter of her land. Her boots sank into soft earth fingertips, brushing weathered fence posts like old friends. The back acre, the one they might take, still stood behind her, but it felt exposed like something too quiet for too long. She stopped at Clara's sunflower patch. Dry stalks. Heads bowed, still holding on. This, she thought, is what they want to erase. But not if I can help it. The plan didn't begin with noise. It began with quiet footsteps and people showing up. Ezra didn't return alone. In 3 days, the gravel path began to hum with soft arrivals. First, a carpenter named Lena repaired the porch steps. Then came a wiry man with a mailbox made of scrap metal strong as iron. Someone rewired the attic. "So Clara can study even when storms take the lights," he said. No one stayed long. No names. Just quiet nods and the warmth of people who understood. Evelyn didn't need explanations. She recognized what this was: Ezra's people, a silent army of the once forgotten. One afternoon she found Clara on the lawn teaching sign language to a boy with paint-stained hands and a cochlear implant. They didn't speak, but their laughter rang clear across the yard like spring returning. Behind the scenes, Evelyn began to fight. With help from Ezra's foundation, she filed a dispute. She pulled out old receipts, tax forms, utility bills, property maps. She wrote letters. She made calls she'd put off for years. And she told her story again and again until it became louder than silence. Then a knock on the door. A woman named Beth. Nervous smile, trembling fingers. "I think. I have something that belongs to you," a yellowed envelope. Addressed to Evelyn's husband. Never opened. Inside a letter from the original loan officer dated 30 years ago. The last line, "Upon full payment the lien shall be discharged within 30 days. At the bottom a red stamp, paid in full, signed, forgotten, but not anymore. The next morning Evelyn labeled a folder, March Property, Reclamation. Then she walked to the garden not to mourn, but to plant. Clara helped dig the hole. Together they placed a small lilac sapling in the earth. Evelyn had kept the cutting wrapped in damp cloth for weeks, unsure why she hadn't planted it. Now she knew. Now was the time. They planted in silence. No speeches, just soil under nails, wind in their hair. That night, Evelyn lit a single candle in the kitchen. On the wall, the drawing still hung, the one Ezra left. But now, there was something new. Clara had added a splash of purple crayon, a garden blooming behind the house filled with sunflowers and open hands. Evelyn didn't cry. She simply closed her eyes, breathed deep, and waited. And when the knock finally came at exactly 700 p.m., she rose, wiped the flour from her palms, and whispered to the quiet, "I knew you'd come." It wasn't a letter this time. It was a package, plain wrapped in brown paper, tucked gently at her doorstep like an old friend returning without fanfare. Inside, a photograph framed in reclaimed wood. Ezra, standing at a podium beneath a skylight, his hand raised in sign not over his heart but forward, as if offering something back to the world. Behind him, projected on a massive screen, was her house, her porch, her open door, and beneath it in quiet print, she didn't ask. She just stayed. Evelyn held the frame for a long time. Not like a trophy, but like a memory made solid. She placed it beside the kitchen shelf next to Clara's newest drawing, a house with wide windows and a path lined with purple flowers. The land was safe now. The lien withdrawn, the title restored. But what mattered more was what had grown in its soil. Clara had planted sunflower seeds again, this time with help. Children came from across counties, some with hearing aids, some with painted canes, some who only communicated with their eyes. And they dug and laughed and signed with flour-dusted hands as Evelyn passed around slices of warm bread and fresh jam. She didn't speak much. She didn't need to. They understood her, and she understood them not through words, but through what was shared space, safety, and something harder to name. On the edge of the garden now stood a hand-carved sign weathered by wind but still clear. If you've been quiet too long, this place remembers you. Take what you need. Leave only warmth. Sometimes people came and took nothing. Sometimes they cried and said thank you to no one in particular. And sometimes they left notes in the mailbox. Short ones. Like, "Your light reached me," or "I didn't disappear. I was just waiting to be seen." And in those moments between the shadows and the sunflowers, Evelyn March became something more than a woman who once opened her door. She became a place where others learned to open again. If this story brought someone to mind, someone who gave, quietly stayed quietly, or loved without needing to be asked, share this with them. Let them know they were seen. And if that someone is you, thank you.